Lawmakers in Newtown, Aurora, and Tucson have put mental illness in the spotlight. Everybody agrees the goal is to identify and treat the mentally ill to prevent tragedies. But when our courts determine incarceration or commitment is necessary, the criminally insane and the severely mentally ill are confined to the Arizona State Hospital. It's a place intended to protect the patients and the public.
But ABC15 investigator Dave Biscobing found many dangerous patients have escaped. And insiders say security cuts put you at risk.
He came to tell me sad news.
Monica Vinquist recalls the day police came to her home.
It was my nightmare come true.
An escaped mental patient had brutally murdered her daughter.
It's a black cloud that no one deserves.
It sits in the heart of Phoenix. A 90-acre compound, high walls, razor wire, security cameras, the Arizona State Hospital.
Being right here in the middle of Phoenix does create its own set of challenges.
230 patients, the criminally insane, violent sex offenders. Hospital CEO Corey Nelson says none of them here by choice.
We've designed our facility to make sure that those individuals stay within the confines.
But insiders say there are gaping holes in security.
They got rid of a lot of the security force. We worry for the public at that point.
At times, this can be a pretty dangerous place.
It's a place where anything can happen on any given day.
The day, May 17, 2011. Just before midnight, Jesus Marietta pulls a badge off an employee's neck, gets past security, out of the building, and into the night. 3 months later, Marietta was arrested for murdering Monica's daughter, April Mott. Her throat was slit, her body covered in bruises.
I did get to say goodbye, and there was a closure.
Marietta pled guilty. His sentence, 22 years in prison. Nelson was hired after the murder.
We've added some more fencing and cameras, and every time that we identify an area that is a potential risk, we try to remediate that risk.
But the ABC15 investigators dug through thousands of public records, police logs, incident reports, and federal inspection forms. We found 16 escapes in the past 3 years.
Do you consider that a problem?
It's a problem, and we take those very, very seriously.
Of the 16 escaped patients, 3 were criminally insane. Just last year, they caught one escapee at a crowded Jack in the Box across the street. Listen to this warning from an insider who asked not to be identified for fear of retaliation.
He could have taken somebody hostage. He could have done all kinds of horrific things.
Another criminally insane patient was loose for 24 hours. He escaped on a field trip at Castles and Coasters, where patients were escorted to play miniature golf.
With the lack of security now, I think that the incidences of AWOLs and escapes are going to rise.
But what insiders find so surprising, after April Mott's murder, the number of security guards at the hospital was cut. Not increased, cut by more than half, from 110 to 50. That's 60 security guards gone.
What you get when you have a large security department like that is you actually end up with a false sense of security.
You don't feel that fewer security guards raise the risk of more AWOLs or escapes?
Absolutely not.
Nelson has a new approach to security. He cut those 60 guards so he could increase the number of staff who provide patient care.
We're going to be so much better off.
He points out it's a hospital, not a prison. The goal is treatment, not incarceration. And mental health experts agree there should be a balance between the number of staff who provide treatment and enough guards who provide security.
We have worked on filling those 60 positions with staff members who are actually working with the patients.
But as of today, that simply has not happened. Records show there are actually fewer direct care staff now than there were before security was cut. In fiscal year 2012, the hospital had 416 people doing direct care. Today, they have 409. And this is not a budget issue. Nelson says the hospital's budget has not been cut.
Everything that was promised as far as putting the extra techs on the floor, having the nurses more involved, beefing up the campus support, none of that has happened.
And documents show there have been 3 escapes since the security cuts began.
Well, it hasn't alleviated the problem.
Right, but it hasn't increased the problem either.
It's too early to tell if the new approach will work. But nearly a dozen insiders told us they have doubts.
What would you say about the security at the hospital right now?
There really isn't any.
Has it failed?
It has failed miserably.
There needs to be some sort of accountability.
April's sister Sharon and her mother say nothing can replace what they've lost.
You haven't filed a lawsuit. Why haven't you decided to kind of push this in the courts?
If I take all their money, then how are they going to protect the next kid?
That's more important to you.
It is more important. Because that could have been anybody's child. That could have been my grandchild. That could have been your parent.
The budget for the state hospital is roughly $70 million this year. And as for the escapes, right now on our website, ABC15.com, we've put up details for every single escape and how the patients got away. I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15 News.
Well, our investigation doesn't stop here. Tomorrow at 10, Dave Biskobing will expose how some escaped patients are still on the streets.
Plus, he's revealing some disturbing details about what some say the hospital should have done to prevent April Mott's murder.
Less than 24 hours after an ABC15 investigation exposed security cuts at the state mental hospital that could lead to more escapes, another patient is on the loose.
ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing is joining us now. And Dave, insiders warned this could happen. Do we know how this patient got out?
Yeah, well, Steve, sources tell me the patient broke a window to get out of the hospital, which is located right in the heart of Phoenix. Now, hospital officials say the escape happened just before noon, and the patient was apprehended minutes later, about 500 feet from the hospital gate. We're told that this was a civil patient, and that means they are court-ordered to the hospital to receive treatment for mental illness. They did not release the patient's name, so there's no information about this person's background. And like you said, this escape comes the day after our exclusive investigation revealed how security at the hospital was cut in half. In fact, this morning, in response to our stories, the director of the state health department wrote a blog touting how the security changes have made it a better and safer place. But getting back to today's escape, officials say the patient never got out of sight of hospital staff. But there have been other escapes in the hospital's past, including one from August, where those patients never returned. And tonight at 10, we're breaking another angle of our exclusive investigation where we take a closer look at those cases. Steve?
Thanks so much, Dave. Looking forward to it.
Not even 24 hours after our ABC15 investigation, another escape from the state mental hospital. Sources say a patient broke their way out of a window and wound up on the streets. He was found minutes later in a nearby neighborhood. Last night at 10, we exposed how hospital security cuts could put the public in danger.
And right now, in part 2 of our exclusive investigation, Dave Biskobing reveals some escaped patients have never been caught.
The Arizona State Hospital, 230 patients are confined here, but that number should be even higher.
There have been patients that have escaped and not been found.
Yeah, there have actually.
Records show just since 2010, 4 escaped patients, some with criminal records, are still on the streets, still missing. They're listed as AWOL, absent without leave. Hospital CEO Corey Nelson says if they're found, they have to be returned. And not just for their own safety, but for the safety of the community.
The worst thing we can do is put somebody back out on the street that isn't prepared for that.
Case in point, Jesus Murrieta.
He escaped from a mental hospital. It was my worst nightmare come true.
Murrieta escaped in May 2011. 3 months later, he brutally beat and murdered April Mott. April's mother, Monica Vinquist, and her sister, Sharon, had to identify the body.
They wouldn't let us see her face or anything because of how badly it was.
Murrieta was sentenced to 22 years in prison. April's family says the hospital did not do enough.
It was 11:25 p.m. when Murrieta escaped. 2.5 hours later, the hospital filed this missing persons report. They told police that he was suicidal and a danger to others. But then 9 hours later, they contacted police again, this time to cancel the missing persons report. They said Murrieta's status was changed to voluntary, meaning he was free to go.
I don't think that should have been taken so lightly.
What's so frustrating for April Mott's family, during the 3 months Murrieta was on the streets, he was stopped by police 6 times. If he'd still been listed as an escapee, he would have been taken into custody and returned to the hospital. Instead, each time Murrieta was cited for minor infractions and released.
He would have been brought back to safety, and my daughter may still be alive.
ABC15 investigators have learned for the second time this month a patient has escaped from the Arizona State Mental Hospital. We're told the patient threw a chair through a window and ran away from the Arizona State Hospital on Sunday. A hospital spokesperson says the patient was caught within minutes and never posed a danger to the public. But sources tell ABC15 investigator Dave Biskobing that patient was actually missing for about an hour, and the same patient violently assaulted a doctor a few weeks ago. Today's escape comes 2 weeks after the investigators exposed deep cuts to the hospital security staff. Hospital CEO Corey Nelson stands by the cuts.
You don't feel that fewer security guards raise the risk of more AWOLs or escapes?
Absolutely not.
There have been 5 escapes since those security cuts.
Tonight, we're bringing you an exclusive ABC15 investigation. It all stems from what we found caught on tape in the Valley.
A level of violence experts say belongs in the streets, not in a public hospital meant to treat the severely mentally ill. This surveillance video, a rare look inside the Arizona State Hospital. Earlier this year, the ABC15 investigators exposed how security was cut in half, even though dangerous patients have escaped from this facility.
Tonight, Dave Biskobing reveals there have been hundreds of assaults in a year, leaving hospital patients and staff with serious and sometimes permanent injuries.
A violent attack caught on camera. 2 patients at the state mental hospital brutally assault each other, punching, kicking, wrestling to the floor. This is not an isolated incident. State records show there are assaults every day. Watch closely. No one stops them. Insiders say with so few security guards, staff are too afraid to intervene. Insiders describe their fear.
It's extremely dangerous.
I can't work if I'm not safe.
230 patients are treated here at the Arizona State Hospital, known as ASH. And in the past year, we found there have been 855 assaults, both patients attacking patients and patients attacking staff.
It's huge. It's catastrophic.
The number of assaults deeply troubles Dr. Mark Wellick. He's run a psychiatric hospital and is the former president of the American Society for Adolescent Psychiatry.
Where there is security, it is possible to provide help. Where there is not security, all you can do is cover your ass. That's not treatment. That is simply every man for himself.
We've spoken to dozens of insiders, and they've told us stories that go far beyond what statistics show about the level of violence here. In the past 6 months alone, hospital employees have suffered a broken jaw, a broken arm, a broken ankle. One man nearly lost his eye. Several employees have suffered concussions, and last December, one woman was beaten so badly she may never work again due to permanent brain injury.
He punched me.
And then there's this woman. She says she quit a job she loved after being assaulted. A patient beat her, leaving her with a concussion and cuts and bruises across her face. We're protecting her identity and the identity of other staff for fear of retaliation.
How long were you there?
Only 4 months.
That quick? What happened?
I was attacked by my patient.
Was there anything you could have done to defend yourself?
I never even saw it coming. The most I could do was, when he was pulling my hair, just grab his hand, and I held it close to my head so that he wouldn't tear my scalp off.
And this insider was assaulted several times and says with so few guards, some staff even resort to using patients for security.
I've had to go and deal with somebody that was in a psychotic episode where the other patients have had to come and follow me and, as they would say, get my back just in case something were to happen because they knew that I was there by myself.
What's your take on that?
That is not a hospital environment. That is the street. It's just another edition of the street. It's anti-treatment, it's hurtful, and it's dangerous.
To get answers, we sat down with the hospital's former CEO, Corey Nelson.
Give me your overall assessment of how you think the hospital's doing when it comes to assaults.
Actually, I think the hospital's doing great.
Nelson no longer works at ASH, but he still runs the hospital after being promoted from CEO to head of the state's behavioral health services. A year ago, Nelson cut ASH's security force by more than half. He renamed the force Campus Support, and he left patient care staff to do their own security. He believes he's made the hospital safer.
We've reduced the number of workers' comp claims by about 30%.
We obtained those records on workers' comp. They show in the past 2.5 years, staff have reported more than 520 injuries from assaults. During that same 2.5-year period, injured workers have missed more than 24,000 hours of work.
Do you have workers that have been off because of assaults for months?
Sure, we have.
How about yours?
You know, I can't answer that one.
Everyone we've spoken to, and it's a lot of people, do not feel safe.
Yeah, some staff, I'm sure, probably do not feel safe. When you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 2012, they rated these types of facilities some of the most challenging to work with in the United States.
The fact is, records show there are now more administrators at ASH than security guards. And our insiders say the staff feels pressured by the administration not to report assaults. Just last July, Corey Nelson sent this memo to hospital employees. The subject, filing charges on patients. The message, evaluate other options before calling police.
It's disrespectful and manipulative.
How do you respond to that?
One of the last sentences I said in the email is that it remains their choice, but that I would like to make sure that they consider all factors in that when they make that choice.
It's very influential. It sends the message that this is okay behavior.
And it's only when staff do call police that the public gets a chance to find out what's going on. We got this tape from the police. The hospital refuses to turn over any of its surveillance video. Footage that would give us an inside look at how dangerous it is.
I wanted to stay there, but I was concerned for my safety.
And Dr. Wellick says high turnover keeps patients from getting the care they need. A problem since there are no life sentences at this hospital. Almost every patient will someday be released.
The situation is a disaster. That's all I can think of, is a terrifying, frightening, humiliating, embarrassing, uncomfortable, dangerous disaster.
Earlier tonight, the ABC15 investigators exposed a shocking level of violence at the Arizona State Mental Hospital, leaving patients and staff with life-threatening injuries. But their investigation into security cuts at mental hospital actually began months ago, when they revealed how a startling number of patients have escaped. And now, ABC15 investigator Dave Biscobing has learned, because of our story, the hospital's top administrator has quietly added security measures.
After we broke the story in February about how deep cuts here at the Arizona State Mental Hospital put the public at risk for escapes, a patient got away the very next day, and it would happen again 2 weeks later.
ABC15 investigators have learned for the second time this month a patient has escaped.
We got our hands on state records that show, in the past 3 years, 18 patients have escaped from the state mental hospital. And 4 of those patients, some with criminal records, are still on the streets.
There have been patients that have escaped and not been found.
Yeah, there have actually.
After we exposed that security had been cut by more than half, for the first time ever, because of our story, the hospital held special drills to train staff about how to prevent and respond to escapes. In this statement, the hospital would not comment on the specifics of the drills. That's because they say the security measures are taken to protect Arizona residents, as well as patients and staff at the facility. And even though the state's top behavioral health official, Corey Nelson, told us that the hospital didn't need any more security, we also found the hospital hired extra workers from a temp agency and reassigned some of its transportation staff to specifically watch the campus.
Since our last story, the hospital has brought in some extra temp workers, is that correct?
The hospital has continually used temporary workers for many, many years to fill vacancies.
Are there extra? Because that's what we heard, extra were brought in, more than had been in the past.
At a couple of instances, there were a few extra people brought in as we were going through some modifications to the facility.
Records show taxpayers have paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for temp workers from a company named Concentric that contracts with the state. An inside source sent us this email, revealing that the extra workers were brought in as temporary aides to watch halls until attention goes away from our stories. Our sources also told us that the staff were meant to act as babysitters, and the temps were not allowed to talk to patients or touch them.
Everyone is in danger.
Experts like Valley psychiatrist Dr. Mark Wellick, who has run a private mental hospital, say that's not enough. Having enough security is extremely important.
It's crucial, because the kinds of people who sometimes, at least, are sent to the state hospital are violent, dangerous people.
We wanted to speak with the state's top health official about the escapes, the assaults, and the recent changes here at the hospital. But Director Will Humble turned down our request for an interview. So we let your state legislators and the governor's office know what we found, and we'll let you know if they plan to do anything about it.
It is a dangerous and violent environment, and it's taxpayer funded. In a series of exclusive reports, ABC15 investigator Dave Biscobing exposed serious problems with safety and security at the state mental hospital. And tonight, he's learning about a patient's gruesome death this week, and it might be the tragic consequence of the issues we've raised.
On September 27th, Christopher Paul Blackwell would have turned 24. He didn't live to see his birthday. Blackwell was a young man with serious mental illness, committed to the Arizona State Hospital for the last 2 years. According to hospital officials, it was just after 10 p.m. Monday. Blackwell collapsed in his room inside the Ironwood unit. A spokesperson from the state health department provided the ABC15 investigators with an official statement about Blackwell's death. It says, hospital staff observed the patient collapse and immediately initiated emergency medical response procedures. Blackwell was transferred by ambulance to the emergency room of the Maricopa Medical Center. He was pronounced dead at 3:40 a.m. Tuesday.
But insiders tell us there's more to this story. Chris Blackwell had a history of swallowing dangerous objects. He wasn't suicidal, but experts say some patients cut themselves or swallow things to relieve stress. Now, multiple sources tell us that Chris Blackwell was a one-to-one patient. That means he was supposed to be monitored closely by a staff member 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The official cause of death has yet to be determined, but sources tell us Blackwell had lacerations to his colon and small intestines. In the past few months, sources also say, despite being closely watched, he had swallowed pieces of a broken CD and a piece of an eyeglass frame. Insiders claim that because of low staffing levels and a dangerous environment, it's difficult or impossible to provide adequate care for patients like Chris. They point to high levels of staff turnover and increasing violence at the hospital as factors.
There should be at all times 2-3 techs on the floor.
We spoke to numerous insiders like this person who actually treated Chris Blackwell.
It actually got to the point where almost every single day I'm on the floor alone. There's many, many days I will be on the floor alone. Other staff members will be on the floor alone.
This insider and others told us how heartbroken they are over Blackwell's death and how much they liked him.
You just never knew on any given day what was going to happen, or even any given moment.
We're trying to find out if police are investigating Chris Blackwell's death. And as for the hospital, administrators are conducting their own investigation. And we learned one of the things they're trying to figure out is who's talking to us. But we're going to stay on top of this story, and we've already requested all of the files and reports related to this tragedy. I'm investigator Dave Biscobing, ABC 15 News.
It is tragic when any mother loses her son.
But if her son dies suddenly in the custody of the state mental hospital where he's supposed to be monitored 24/7 and getting treatment, no explanation will suffice. Tonight, ABC 15 investigator Dave Biscobing talks to the mother demanding answers.
She wants to know how and why her son died so she might finally find some peace.
He liked to help other people.
Donna Baird spends a lot of time looking through pictures of her youngest son, Chris.
He was a year old here, and I thought it was cute because he was waving hi.
Chris didn't have an easy childhood. Donna says he struggled from birth with physical and mental challenges.
He was born without a pituitary gland. He was behind in growth, so it was a lot of work with him. It was a lot of physical therapy. It was a lot of doctor appointments.
As a teen, Chris began cutting and later turned to swallowing dangerous objects. For treatment, he was committed to the Arizona State Hospital, known as ASH.
He did not know how to cope with stress. Chris's coping skill was self-harming to ease up the pain that he had inside. And he was supposed to be getting treatment for that.
But now, memories and photographs are all Donna has left.
The last time I talked to him, he asked if I could come down, and I said, I'll be down there for your party, your birthday party.
On September 9th, Donna got a call every mother dreads.
I got a call at 11 o'clock Monday evening, and they said that Christopher collapsed.
He was taken to the Maricopa Medical Center. Christopher Paul Blackwell died hours later. It was just 2 weeks before his 24th birthday.
But instead, we did it at his gravesite.
You obviously miss him very much already.
Every day's a struggle. His voice is gone. He's gone. And all I have left is a big old hole.
For 8 months, the ABC 15 investigators have been reporting on serious problems at the state hospital. We revealed deep cuts to security, staffing shortages, and a dangerous number of escapes, some involving criminally insane patients. And we exposed a shocking level of violence, including assaults on staff and patients that caused serious injuries. When we asked hospital officials about the death of Chris Blackwell, they contacted his mother.
They said that you were going to air something on Christopher's death, and that they could not put a stop to it, but I could, and gave me the number to do it.
Donna did call us, but she didn't tell us to stop. She told us she wanted us to tell Chris's story.
I feel there's a lot that needs to be exposed.
State officials have refused to talk to us about how or why Donna's son died. But we've obtained this autopsy report from the county medical examiner. He had swallowed several objects in the days, weeks, and months before his death. An eyeglass rim, a pencil, and screws. But the last time Chris got treatment for swallowing dangerous things was in May. And the medical examiner found Chris had a severe stomach infection and died as a result of complications of recurrent foreign body ingestion. The autopsy also contains information supplied by the hospital. Many suicide attempts. Donna says that's not true.
Chris was not suicidal. Chris never wanted to kill himself.
Donna believes her son's death was preventable. She doesn't think Chris got proper psychiatric treatment or medical care at ASH.
He took a 95% turn for the worst, being an ASH.
Here at the state hospital, Christopher Blackwell was considered such a danger to himself that he was classified as a 1-to-1 patient. That means he was supposed to be under constant watch by his staff member, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even as he slept.
I think I need a lot of answers. Somebody needs to come up with some really good, truthful answers.
Donna wants to know how Chris managed to swallow dangerous objects no less than 5 times since November 2012. We spoke to 2 insiders who treated Chris, and they told us staffing levels at the hospital are so low, it's nearly impossible for a patient like Chris to get adequate supervision and care.
There's many, many days I will be on the floor alone. Other staff members will be on the floor alone.
Donna has hired an attorney and says she plans to file a lawsuit.
I'm trying to look at the positive side of things, but yet it still hurts knowing I'll never see my son again.
I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15 News.
But first, a shocking level of violence and a lack of security. Both problems exposed by the ABC 15 investigators at the Arizona State Mental Hospital. We've raised disturbing questions about escapes, assaults, inadequate patient care, and low staffing levels.
And now Dave Biskobing has learned the feds are stepping in and giving the state a failing grade.
Mr. Humble, you got a second?
Will Humble is the man in charge of the Arizona Health Department, and that includes the state hospital known as ASH.
I was hoping we could talk to you about...
After several exclusive reports and 1 week after our story on the sudden death of patient Chris Blackwell, inspectors with the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services showed up at the hospital. The ABC 15 investigators have obtained this important notice sent to ASH. After conducting a complaint validation survey, inspectors found serious deficiencies in the areas of the governing body, patient rights, and nursing services. They wrote, the hospital doesn't have the capacity to render adequate care, and that the deficiencies adversely affect patient health and safety. We checked with the chair of the state's health committee, Senator Nancy Bartow, a week after ASH received the letter. An aide for Bartow told us that the senator just learned of it, and she's now investigating. Representative Chad Campbell told us he's considering legislative hearings after watching our investigations and reading the letter.
It's a very troubling trend with this hospital, and there seems to be a disregard both for the safety of the patients as well as the staff from the leadership over there.
This letter puts the hospital leadership on notice. They have until close of business this Friday to correct all of its problems. And they have to be real fixes. Just plans of future correction or evidence of progress will not be sufficient. If they don't meet the deadline, the hospital could lose millions in Medicare reimbursements, further impacting patient care and straining Arizona's budget. We tried to get answers from the man ultimately responsible for the hospital, State Health Director Will Humble.
Mr. Humble, Dave Biskobing, ABC 15. Do you have a quick second for me?
He would not stop to talk with us or answer any questions. We walked with him for more than a quarter mile before he entered a building.
Mr. Humble, can I get 1 minute?
And then went into a bathroom. When he came out, he again declined to answer our questions.
Mr. Humble, I need just a minute to talk to you about this.
I have an appointment over here at TES.
If I could just get a minute, this is really important. It's about the state hospital possibly losing Medicare agreement.
I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15 News.
Federal inspectors could release their full report and findings as soon as this week. We've put a copy of that notice you just saw on ABC15.com.
Tonight, a dramatic twist after the death of a patient at our state mental hospital. The ABC 15 investigators have a scathing report from federal inspectors. It outlines major problems, including deficiencies that may have led to the death of a 23-year-old man.
A 46-page report from federal inspectors. Inside, he's listed as patient number 2. But his real name is Christopher Paul Blackwell. His mother says he was just 2 weeks from his 24th birthday.
His voice is gone. He's gone. And all I have left is a big old hole.
Chris was a one-to-one patient at the Arizona State Hospital, known as ASH. That means he should have been watched around the clock to prevent him from swallowing harmful objects. But at least 5 times in the past year, Chris ingested something dangerous. The Fed's report reveals on September 6th, just 4 days before he died, Chris was taken from ASH to the ER. A CT scan indicated he swallowed pieces of a broken CD. The Feds say when Chris returned to ASH the next day, medical staff rules and regulations dictate he must be examined by a physician. But a doctor at the state hospital admitted to inspectors Chris was never examined. 2 days later, September 9th, Chris collapsed. He died the next day from a severe stomach infection.
I feel there's a lot that needs to be exposed.
Donna Baird believes her son's death was unnecessary, and the feds found the hospital failed to provide Chris with quality care and that his life was endangered. But Chris Blackwell wasn't the only one. In the past few months, inspectors say the hospital failed to protect 5 other patients just like Chris, who all required 24/7 monitoring. Another example, on July 13th, a patient was able to remove a protective helmet and bang his head repeatedly without anyone watching him. The same day, a suicidal woman was able to take a sharp object, hide under her blanket, and cut herself. Experts like Dr. Mark Wellick, who's run a psychiatric hospital, say that's unacceptable.
It's a hostile environment. It's an environment that's dangerous for patients and for staff.
Inspectors also found systemic problems with nursing care. Time after time, the hospital failed to meet required levels of staffing. That's a problem the ABC15 investigators first exposed in February.
There's many days I will be on the floor alone. Other staff members will be on the floor alone.
After we reported staffing shortages, the hospital hired temps to fill the gaps. But that's where feds discovered another failure. Temps were assigned to work with some of the most dangerous and needy patients, and hospital officials put temps to work without knowing if they were qualified or competent. In 4 cases, the feds found temps let patients hurt themselves or others.
And obviously, this needs to be fixed.
After seeing our stories, Representative Chad Campbell wanted answers and met with top hospital officials.
They gave us this rosy picture that everything was great, everything was fine, and that's obviously not the case.
Mr. Hummel, Dave Biscobing, ABC15. Do you have a quick second for me?
The head of the state health department has ignored or declined repeated requests for an interview.
I think it says that there's something they're trying to hide. If they lose this certification, that's $6 million that we're going to have to fill with Arizona taxpayer money.
Tonight, a top lawmaker taking aim at the state mental hospital because of an ABC15 investigation. The feds have already stepped in after Dave Biscobing exposed dangerous conditions that put patients and staff at risk, and now plans to force the hospital to undergo a full audit.
A shocking level of violence, a troubling number of escapes, and a dangerous lack of staffing. Representative Chad Campbell has been outspoken about what the ABC15 investigators have uncovered at the Arizona State Mental Hospital.
It seems like this whole ship is broken, and they need to right the ship.
Campbell met with hospital officials a few months ago.
And they gave us this rosy picture that everything was great, everything was fine.
He didn't believe it then, and he's certainly not convinced now, especially after a young patient's death and after the hospital failed a federal inspection that was triggered by our investigation. Campbell says it's time to take meaningful action.
We're going to introduce a bill to force an audit this year.
You might be surprised to learn, for a place that got more than $70 million in taxpayer dollars last year, the last time the Arizona State Hospital was audited was 14 years ago, in 1999.
And the results weren't pretty. Auditors found the hospital had severe difficulties ensuring that patients live in a safe and therapeutic environment. And staffing shortages prevented adequate therapy for patients or intervening in patient disputes.
The next audit isn't scheduled until 2019. We can force an audit, though. The legislature has that authority.
In the past, state health and hospital officials said they needed more money and new facilities to fix their problems. They got their wish. The state spent more than $110 million to build brand new civil and forensic units. Experts say it appears little has changed.
Any money that's being spent there is completely being wasted. It's cost inefficient rather than cost efficient.
Mark Wellick is the past president of the American Society for Adolescent Psychiatry. He also ran a private psychiatric hospital.
I hope it finally ends up somehow getting into the legislature and getting discussed.
I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15 News.
State Mental Hospital under renewed scrutiny tonight. Federal inspectors are back checking to see if the hospital has cleaned up its act. But ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing has learned of even more lapses in safety and security since the feds' last visit, and that could keep the hospital from getting a passing grade.
We confirmed just days ago a patient stole an employee's badge, got out of his unit, got past security checkpoints, and assaulted another patient who was supposed to be under constant watch by 2 staff members. We also learned this same patient violently assaulted another patient 2 months ago, causing serious injuries that sent the patient to the hospital for almost 2 weeks.
It's a hostile environment. It's an environment that's dangerous for patients and for staff.
It's getting a passing grade now, but tonight our ABC 15 investigators are questioning whether the state mental hospital is really any safer. Inspectors came to the state hospital because of our stories, and tonight Dave Biskobing shows us the problems still popping up. They're similar to problems leading up to a patient's death.
During a follow-up inspection by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, more deficiencies were discovered at the Arizona State Hospital. Multiple times, the hospital either failed to document or check up on patients' medical conditions after they returned from the emergency room or were placed on a sick call log. They also found that a new patient was able to swallow dangerous objects. In those cases, records show the hospital could not confirm the physician evaluated the patients. The deficiencies are similar to the major lapses in care that led to the death of patient Chris Blackwell in September.
Now to an ABC 15 investigation. This young man suffered for months in the care of Arizona State Mental Hospital before he died. And Dave Biskobing just got a hold of a new claim filed by his mother. In that paperwork, details even more troubling than our exclusive reports on this story so far.
Christopher Paul Blackwell was supposed to be watched around the clock at the Arizona State Hospital to prevent him from swallowing dangerous objects.
Fire department, what's the location of your emergency?
But after he was rushed to the Maricopa Medical Center in emergency surgery just before he died, doctors made a gruesome discovery. They found 3 eyeglass rims lodged inside of him, rims he swallowed 5 months earlier.
I feel there's a lot that needs to be exposed.
The state hospital told Blackwell's mother, Donna Baird, that he had passed the frames without any perforations. Now we know that wasn't true.
I think I need a lot of answers.
Donna just filed this notice of claim with the state. She's asking for $7 million, or she'll file a lawsuit.
His voice is gone. He's gone. And all I have left is a big old hole.
The claim also reveals several new details about Blackwell's time at the state hospital and the lack of care he received right up until his death. Chris was assaulted or abused by staff and patients repeatedly. Some assaults required hospitalization. In addition to eyeglass frames, Chris was able to swallow a razor blade, glass, a box cutter, screws, and a broken CD case. And 1 month before he died, Donna asked hospital staff why Christopher was so bloated. In response, one worker joked it was probably because he swallowed so many foreign objects.
It's very fresh. It's like it happened last night. But yet it still hurts knowing I'll never see my son again.
In the last paragraph of the claim, the family's attorney wrote they've heard evidence is being destroyed. Now in September, we filed a public records request for all of the documents and records related to Blackwell's death. As of today, we have not received a single thing. I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15 News.
Less than a month after the feds gave the state mental hospital a passing grade, ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing is exposing troubling new allegations.
This time they're coming from a special committee that's supposed to help patients suffering from abuse and civil rights violations.
A patient died. There are patients who are being mistreated. There are patients who suffer because of understaffing, and we can't discuss that.
Strong words from members of the Arizona State Hospital Human Rights Committee, a special oversight board created by the legislature to help patients.
Patients have been severely cut back on their rights.
In bitter testimony recently given before the Senate, 3 different members ripped the Arizona State Hospital.
The hospital is not going to acknowledge our power, if you want to say it, or our duties.
The committee meets every month, so I decided to show up unannounced to this month's meeting to witness their work firsthand. State law allows members to view patient files and make on-site visits, but at the meeting I learned that after 1 year of work, the committee has not been allowed to make any on-site visits or talk directly to patients.
The committee is allowed to review a summary of serious incidents at the hospital every month.
It averages about 150 to 175 a month.
Reports that show extreme violence, including dozens of assaults a month, and concerns over a lack of safety, security, and staffing that led to a patient's horrific death and allowed patients to hurt themselves and others.
When we did address patients that we felt had multiple incident reports, the CMO came and basically shut us down and told us that it was not our right to talk about that, and that the hospital could not spend the time, effort, or money to investigate those things.
ABC 15's Dave Biskobing also confirmed another patient died unexpectedly at the state hospital 2 weeks ago.
Now, the hospital is refusing to turn over any information about that woman's death, but Dave is digging into what happened, and he'll be sure to let you know what he finds.
For more than a year, a special committee to help patients at the Arizona State Mental Hospital said they were blocked from doing their work. But that's changed days after a report by ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing. And Dave, it seems like your investigation had a real impact over there.
Yeah, Katie, when I got to the meeting for the Human Rights Committee earlier this month, they were furious that they had not been allowed to make a single visit to the hospital or talk to any patients, even though state law says they can. Well, after we did the story, they finally got in.
ABC 15 investigators have been exposing the extreme physical violence at Arizona State Mental Hospital, where there are hundreds of assaults a year.
But now Dave Biskobing discovered there have also been dozens of sex assault allegations, and hospital officials are refusing to release information about what has happened.
Tonight, a new insider is coming forward to talk about the level of sexual activity that goes on inside the Arizona State Hospital. And it all raises questions about the hospital's ability to prevent and respond to sex assaults.
I know that there was a staff member that was in one of the rooms. I think she was fired. They found her naked.
We're protecting the identity of this employee who's describing just one of dozens of sex assault allegations at the Arizona State Hospital.
Do you think that they do happen there?
Oh, yeah.
The insider also describes constant, open sexual activity.
You also know about patients who just openly expose themselves, sometimes to other patients, to staff. Is that true?
All the time.
It happens all the time.
Almost every shift.
You've seen 3 or 4 or 5 of them do it all at once to each other.
Yes.
After hearing similar stories from many hospital sources, in August of last year, we sent this public records request to the hospital to get copies of every sex assault incident report from 2011 through 2013. Today, almost 11 months later, we're still waiting.
Well, that's completely unacceptable.
Dave Coulier is a national public records expert and dean of the University of Arizona Journalism School.
They've broken the law. They've said no to you to these records by this long delay.
Instead of incident reports, the hospital did release some very limited information, a basic list of sex assault allegations. But it does not include any details about what happened and is missing 2011 and most of 2013.
Either they're trying to hide something or they're inept and they need a new record-keeping system.
The limited information released by ASH raises questions. From January 2012 to March 2013, their list shows 28 sex assault allegations. Now, hospital policies show if it's believed a sex assault occurred, they should notify police. But Phoenix police records show they were notified 3 times. Now, policies also show that after an assault, a sex assault nurse examiner should be called. But a hospital spokesperson told me no sex assault examination kits have ever been given.
This is our public hospital, this is our money, and these are people who are being put at risk, and we need to know what's going on.
I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15 News.
Well, the state hospital just sent a short statement denying the allegation against the former employee, but they refused to discuss any specifics and wouldn't answer any other questions. Tomorrow at 6, our investigation continues. We'll hear more from inside sources about how dangerous synthetic drugs like bath salts and spice are smuggled into the hospital.
State Hospital is supposed to be a secure facility for our state's severely mentally ill and criminally insane. So how are patients getting their hands on dangerous synthetic drugs like bath salts and spice? Tonight, an insider tells ABC 15 investigator Dave Biskobing how it's happening and who's to blame.
You know of staff that bring in contraband for patients.
Yes.
And this happens regularly.
Yes.
And by contraband, this insider means dangerous hallucinogens.
Did that surprise you the first time you learned about that?
Oh, it really scared me.
We dug through court records for patients in the Arizona State Hospital's care, and we found doctors' reports which say psychotic patients not only use bath salts and spice in the hospital, but they're addicted to them.
Why is it that the staff are smuggling this stuff in?
You know, they make friends so that maybe they're not going to get attacked, or they just feel safer. Maybe they feel, because if the patient is their friend, they're not going to harm them.
In 2012, the security force at the hospital was eliminated, and we've shown this video many times before. It's a rare look at the extreme violence inside the hospital, a place where our investigation found there were 855 assaults in a year.
That is not a hospital environment, that is the street.
Dr. Mark Wellick is a national expert and has run a private psychiatric hospital. Here's his reaction to hearing about the bath salts and spice.
If you give a hallucinogen to a person who's already hallucinating or potentially can hallucinate, all you do is make things much worse. And it's like giving arsenic to a person who has ulcers.
Many workers still tell us it's as dangerous as ever, and the hospital remains very short-staffed.
Do patients help protect the staff when fights break out?
Oh yeah,
So they actually almost act like bodyguards.
definitely.
So patients actually feel like they have to take safety into their own hands.
Yes.
I'm investigator Dave Biskobing, ABC 15 News.
Well, the Arizona State Hospital turned down our request for an interview, but in a brief statement, officials say they take the issue of contraband seriously. Dave Biskobing has been investigating the state hospital for more than a year now, and you can find all of his reports on our website, abc15.com/investigators.